Good day, ladies. We couldn't finish with our lecture on the Unit 2, and on the Unit 2 we looked at the meaning of the heuristic methods or the learner-centered methods of teaching, where we talked about the discovery, the problem solving, and others. So today we are continuing with our discussion on the learner-centered approaches. So look at the inquiry learning strategies. Here we are saying that the inquiry approach is flexible yet systematic. It is systematic in the sense that it follows what we call 3-step problem solving procedures, and there will be a table that we'll look at. Yet it is flexible in that the activities used in addressing the problem may vary. So let's look at the 3-step procedure. One, we'll look at identifying the problem. Identifying the problem. So the inquiry technique or approach, learning is closely related to discovery learning. Thus, the problem selection processes are essentially identical. Here, they are essentially identical, with either the teacher deciding as in guided or modified inquiry, or the student deciding as in open inquiry the problems or the issues to be addressed. Here we are saying that sometimes teacher can guide the learners as to where to search for solutions to problems identified. It can be environmental pollution, the pollution of a local river. It can be a teenage pregnancy. Or the learners or the students may also come together and say that yes, we have also identified an interesting area we want to venture into, we want to investigate, we want to find out. But whatever the students have found must be in line with the subject you're teaching. So if the social studies, then the problem should also be related to social studies. If it is integrated science, it should be done that way. Alright. Then this decision, of course, depends on the sophistication of the tools the student is going to use. Sometimes, if the problem is difficult, it needs adequate teaching and learning materials that require to be able to solve the problem. And if the students are many, that the available teaching and learning materials are inadequate, it will be very difficult for the student to be able to get materials, to be able to search for solutions to the problems identified. So in short, you must decide whether students are ready and have the skills to identify the suitable problem for the study. And all these borders down to what we call the teacher being the facilitator. You need to assess the students whether they have the necessary skills, the knowledge, and the ability to be able to identify the suitable problems for the study. So in most cases, however, you must continually monitor the problem identification process and provide guidance or suitable alternatives for consideration. So your duty as a facilitator is to always guide and prompt them, because your duty is to be a coach. You provide guidance, you provide direction, you advise, and prompt them and ask probing questions that will enlighten students and give them the needed room to be able to find solutions to the problems identified. And then working towards solutions. So here the second task in inquiry lesson is to work on a solution to the problem. Now you have identified the problem, maybe pollution of a local water, local river, local community. So now how are you going to identify the solution to the problem so that there wouldn't be any pollution? Again, there should be no set prescription or rules governing the procedure for finding a solution. Usually when you give students or we give you a blueprint, a checklist, a set of questions for you to serve as a guide for you to be able to solve the problem. Sometimes it curtails your thinking, it blocks your thinking. So the idea is that we give you the needed room, we create a democratic environment whereby you can also exploit. Sometimes you even come out with good suggestions that are even more reasonable than what is being prescribed in a textbook or being laid down by an expert. So in fact, decision regarding strategies directed towards a solution can be teacher orchestrated, meaning a teacher is giving you the guide, giving you the direction as what to do. Or it can also be student orchestrated, and that one falls under what we call modified and open water inquiry, where the student is now independent. It becomes a critical thinker. The student can think independently and come out with solutions to problems. Here it means that the student is well empowered. Without the teacher, he or she can't identify problems and find solutions to them. That's what we meant by what we call open inquiry. So the emphasis in inquiry learning should be placed on the process of finding a solution to a problem, not on the solution itself. Here, whenever appropriate and within limit, students should be given the opportunity to devise their own strategies for addressing problem solution. And that's why under learner-centered, we don't encourage you and pour. The focus of teaching and learning rests on the learner. The learner exploits, the learner comes out with their own solution to problems, and they should be given the opportunity. They shouldn't be guided, shouldn't be too strict, it shouldn't be too rigid, it should be flexible. Because they often say that there are so many ways of killing a cat. So give them that opportunity to explore, but with minimal supervision. You need to guide them, you need to coach them. That's the idea of a child-centered approach, the learner-centered approach. And as Madam indicated earlier on, and one of the principles of teaching when we talk of child-centered education, the idea, the planning, everything rests on the learner. The learner exploits, the learner is given that democratic space to share their views freely, and by you, the facilitator, must guide. You need to direct, assist them. Some may want to attack a problem through the literature and a search of textbooks, whereas others may want to interview experts in the problem area, and others may want to design and carry out experiments. So in these strategies, you need to empower them. If a problem they are looking for, or the solution they are looking for to solve a particular problem is in the library, then you have to give them that space to go to a library and search for books, or you give them a website where they can search for information regarding the problem and our discussion. Others may also want to design some interview guide and then interview people who have authority, who are expert in that field. And so probably if it is guidance and counseling, then you may need an expert in that field, and Emma and Dawson, Papa Ban, they are there to assist. You can go and interview them, and any problem related to career selection or a social problem. Others may want to design and carry out experiments. There are other problems that needs experiment. Then you need to go to a laboratory, the lab. So in a way, the teacher should provide the freedom to enable students to develop creative approaches to solving problems. That is the idea of the inquiry. These opportunities show students how inquiry works in the real world. So if you give them the opportunity, some might even experience it, some might have that kind of prior experience, but they actually don't know. It is your duty as a teacher to actually guide them, nurture them, let them develop further in their experiences to be able to face the real world. Because the problem they solve, they are likely to face those realities in the real world. And you have to give them that kind of opportunity to explore. Establishing solutions, the success of inquiry learning is not necessarily dependent on reaching a predetermined conclusion. Sometimes we want to investigate into a problem, but you may end up not being able to reach a conclusion. And that's why we are saying that problem solving is cyclical. It is iterative, just like a cycle. So if you search and you're not able to get solution, then you have to go back and revise. Even when directed by the teacher, inquiry learning should be a highly personal experience for individual involved, because once you are directly involved in searching for solutions to problems, you also gather experience alongside. Gather experience from friends, gather experience from your facilitator and others. And all these help in the teaching and learning process. So individuals should be given opportunities for applying themselves totally, so they may put their fullest talent, ideas, skills, and judgment to work in reaching their own conclusion. So that was earlier on I mentioned that the idea of this particular course is to create what we call a democratic classroom, and let everybody feel free to share their ideas, to apply their talent, the ideas they have, they need to share. Because the 21st century definition of teaching is the creation and sharing of knowledge, and you must also be open to judgment. You must be open to constructive criticisms, and it is in the field of academia, that is how it works. You learn from others, and then you also must be accepted to follow, lay down rules and regulations, and they also accept your weaknesses and strengths. And let's look at the benefit of inquiry learning. So the inquiry learning method of teaching has several unique benefits. One, first, it encourages students to develop creative solutions to problems. If you are given the opportunity, you can also develop, because most of you have varied experience. And so when you are given that kind of opportunity, you are able to come out with your own solutions to problems. There is no rigid guidelines. The guidelines are not strict, so the imagination can be used without penalty. So in fact, students sometimes can even go off on tangent and address problems that have little to do with the original problem. So all these are problems, and they are saying that these investigations can be as original and limitless as students' imaginations. So they are allowed to solve a problem any way they can. Students are also free to use the skills they do possess in reaching their own problems, because they are now empowered. They are free to think, they are independent thinkers. They are confident. Even in the absence of a facilitator, they can also find solutions to their own problem. Last, students carry out the approach to the best of their abilities, and then stop without being penalized for not reaching a predetermined solution. The idea shouldn't be that if you're not able to find solutions to a particular problem, you're penalized, you're punished. No. And that students have confidence is enhanced creativity. So with this kind of democratic society, democratic classroom, learners are free to share their ideas, and they are more willing to exhibit their talent they have. Let's look at the limitations or the problems. Inquiry tends to appear and sometimes tend to be chaotic. For example, if students that are asked to find solution to problem, a single problem, and the students assume, how are you going to control them? They may result in a chaotic situation. Although some students involved generally cause few problems, inquiry can be seen to be an undisciplined process in which little learning is taking place. So here we are saying that anticipating and locating the material can be a major problem. For example, if students are given that freedom and you are not careful, the situation will turn into a chaos. Most students will be undisciplined in that process. So you need to be on your guard and always try to advise and counsel them. That's why teachers, we are surrogate parents, we are coaches, we are we are counselors, and we are facilitators. So our idea is to engage and then advise learners during the process. And it is also impossible to anticipate all the resources that students will require in one inquiry lesson. For example, if all the learners are to go to the laboratory to conduct an experiment to find a solution to a problem. Meanwhile, you have limited resources, teaching and learning material. How are you sure you'll be able to ensure that all learners or students get the needed material before they embark on a solution to the problem? So indeed, some students may want to conduct experiments, whereas others may also want a special reference books in the library to carry out a literature. And all these, you, the teacher, need to provide, make sure the environment in which you operate, you have all the teaching and learning material for the learners to be empowered with. Whatever they need, you must try to anticipate student needs and make the materials available. So we are saying that before you embark, ensure that all these teaching and learning materials are available before you make an attempt. It is not an easy task. As with discovery learning, a problem associated with temporary learning is time. It is also time consuming in view of the number of topics you have to cover within a term. And the timetable is so rigid that if you are not careful, you will not be able to apply this concept. But it is also rewarding if you are able to manage your time well, because sometimes it takes more than 2, 3, 5 hours. But you know, a single lesson cannot last for more than 2 hours. So in all these things you need to factor and then ensure that time is a factor, a major factor. The problem unique to inquiry is evaluation, because you must try or must provide grades. You need some criteria on which to base your evaluation. Assuming you want to conduct an experiment, others are also going to a library, others may also want to read a book, others may want to interview experts. What kind of criteria are you going to design in such a way that you'll be able to evaluate, pass judgment on learners' investigations? So that one in itself becomes a challenge. You need to provide what we call quantitative and qualitative or judgment. So if I give you 3 out of 10, that is quantitative. But if I'm able to provide a description, 3 out of 10, maybe average or below average. So the description I'm giving to the mark you have obtained in your investigation is what we call qualitative evaluation. Alright, let's look at simulation and games. Simulation and games activities can be most useful as teaching tools. Indeed, they provide a variety of teaching and learning opportunities in the classroom. You see, because learners cannot sit down for so long a time, you need to be creative and make sure that you include games in the teaching and learning process so that learners are active and they will be willing to participate. Such activities can create interest and relieve tension in difficult curricular areas. Furthermore, students often find simulation and games fun. So we are going to look at them. So simulation is the presentation of an artificial situation or event that represents reality, but that removes risk to the individual involved in the activity. So simulation can be viewed as models of reality. They are models of what? Reality. So for example, your seniors were engaged in on-campus teaching practice. It's an example of a simulation. And it might also exist under manageable and controlled conditions. And there are two main types of simulation that can be used in the classroom. We have the human simulations and then person-to-computer simulations. So under this one, we are looking at the human simulations are usually conducted in the form of what? Role play. If I'm saying you should role play Ajaku or whatever, or Halloween. I also have what we call drama. Whereas person-to-person computer simulation often take the form of what? Simulation games. Sometimes you use the games to portray a certain reality. And then let's look at the distinction between a simulation and a game. There is no clear-cut distinction between a simulation and a game. Usually, games are played to win, whereas simulation need not to have a winner. So in every game that you play, there should be a winner, and there should be what? A loser. And that is normal. Whereas with the simulation, no. In fact, in some situations, simulations, it is difficult to determine whether there are winners or losers. And that's why we all try to encourage. In the teaching and learning process, we are not trying to create a best and a worst student. What we are trying to do is that there should be that kind of cooperative learning. All that experience you have, you need to share with your friends, and let your friends also benefit from your talent and skills. And that's the importance of the teaching and learning. And that's what we want the 21st century teacher to be. The idea is to create and share knowledge. We are not talking about winners, we are not talking about losers. Let's all have the experience. Let all of us learn. But in the situation where you are going to organize a football match, automatically you may need a winner or a loser. That is different. It's also part of games. Regardless of the label, simulations and games are similar in that there are roles that must be assumed and specific types of activities for the participants. If you are to role play a certain situation or scenario, we need to assign roles to people to be able to act on them. Maybe somebody may be playing a role of an old woman, another a young man, or whatever. Roles must be given to participants. However, participants must be willing. The underlying word is this must be voluntary. It shouldn't be, they shouldn't be coerced. They shouldn't be forced to. Let the learners also come out with what they can do. Don't, force it on them. In addition, the purpose of a simulation is to encourage students to act out the behaviors and express in their own words the actions and arguments behind an issue. Thus, whether an activity is a simulation or a game, often it's a matter of what semantics. It's just the language, it's just the name. As stated earlier, role playing involves giving out of rules, for example, in recreating a historical scene of the past, possible events of the future, or the significant current events. Role playing usually involves a structure, a stated issue to be resolved, and then in some cases a winner or a loser. So here we can even look at you can role play on a teenage pregnancy. There are several topics you can do that. It can be, for example, HIV and AIDS. And you can say AIDS is a disease for the poor. You can role play, all these are topics that you can engage learners in. Essentially, the idea is to become the individual being played as much as possible, and by recreating the person's actions to gain a better understanding of the person and the related motivation. And this is what learners want. Let them voluntarily come out and then pick a role that they can play best. Your role is to guide them. So role-playing simulation may involve a limited number of individuals in one-to-one interaction, or several students in small group interactions. So it can be done one-to-one, or maybe in a small group of 5 or 10. And then the sociodrama is also a form of role-playing. However, it differs in that it focuses on how the group resolve a problem. That is, alternative solutions to problems of concern to the total group are explored. For example, the problem may be one related to an issue before a town meeting, a family problem, or United Nations problem. If it is probably a conflict in the family and then the role play, then there should be a consensus. After the actors involved state their points, then there should be a general consensus that, oh yes, whether A is wrong or right, going forward, there should be a consensus, there should be unity within the family. So it's a way of saying that, though problems occur, but your ability to overcome those problems and become one is a major rule. And sometimes they can even be a conflict in the classroom. So your idea of letting the individuals involved know that A or B may be right or wrong, but going forward they should be what you need. Simulation or educational games involve students in decision-making roles in which they compete for certain objectives according to specified rules. These educational games should reflect society. They should offer students the opportunity to experience roles that are common in life. However, the competitive nature of the game should be kept in perspective. For example, if we are talking about educational simulation, there are issues that are related to the courses you study. This particular course is a professional course that makes you a professional teacher. That's why Madam took you through the meaning of teaching principles, governing teaching, and it took you through the behavior of a professional teacher, what you need to behave as a teacher, to behave professionally. And these things, you learn them, and then you are supposed to practice it in real life. There are certain things governing the teaching profession, so you need to ensure that you keep to the rules of the game. And that's what a educational simulation of game seeks to do. So one of the best known educational games is what we call Monopoly, a simulation board game of the real estate business. Let's look at this one. The use of computer simulations and games is slowly increasing. Computer games are now familiar to everyone. They are often played on home computers and in many classrooms. Here we are looking at even computer simulation where they design some educational games using computer. There are a series of them. We have the jigsaw puzzle. They are there. We can even talk of the game of chess. There are several of them that you can even use a computer to play. Some cartoons and then what have you. So they come in myriad of format, which the majority of those are appropriate for middle, secondary school classroom, involving what we talk of hand-eye coordination. If in the basic school, especially those in the lower primary, when they are writing, you guide them. Sometimes my first school people, they need to be guided. Hand-eye coordination or problem solving abilities such as chess and then dragon. All these are games. But every game or simulation, what it means is that at every level, you need to design this in such a way that it suits the developmental level of the learner. That's what we are saying, from the primary, the middle school, the secondary school, and then up to the university. So indeed, computer games can be functioned as excellent motivational device when the chance of playing a game is contingent on doing one's work. So when you have it, you are well motivated. And some of you even spend endless hours playing games in the computer. Benefit of simulation: they actively involve students in their own learning. They provide immediate feedback to students. So once you are involved in the act, the immediate feedback is given to you. Or if I'm to practice as for example, on campus teaching practice, you are taken through so that in the near future you become a teacher. Then you practice your skills. Then a feedback is given to you as a student. Your colleagues will also give you feedback. They will identify your strengths and weaknesses. The same thing applies to the teacher. So all these feedback is so immediate, is given to the learner. They enable students to practice communication skills. Yes, because you interact with learners, with your colleagues, with the teacher in the group, it improves your communication skills. They also create a high degree of interest and enthusiasm. Learners are also happy to participate. And they also allow teachers to work with a wide range of student capabilities at the same time. So varied experience from learners are tapped. If a teacher You have to observe that some of the students who have brilliant ideas, you need to also tap it. Whereas we teach, we also learn from you. They promote and reward analytical and critical thinking. And the essence of this course is to make you an independent critical thinker. You should be able to think critically and come up with solutions to problems. We also allow experimentation with a model of the real environment. So once you learn it from the textbook or from the experiment, then all these problems are found within our environment. If you go to a laboratory to conduct experiment on how to purify water, in the real society you do that. Some do that some may even boil the water. Some may also use filters. So simulation and games appear to be quite effective as motivational tools. Some learners are actively engaged with the simulation and games. They become happy. They don't sleep in class. Students think they are fun and they even learn. So it serves as an entertainment at the same time. Learners also learn from games and simulations. Limitations of simulation and games. They demand a great deal of imagination on the part of the teacher and student. So you need to come out with a topic or an issue that is of interest to the student. They often screen out critical elements. For example, the driver education simulator often does not include traffic, noise, and the presence of others. So these are issues that serve as a limitation to simulation and games if you are talking of the computer. The expense involved in obtaining commercially produced simulation and games can be great, because sometimes it needs money. So assuming you are to come back on a computer simulation, how many computers do we have in the basic schools or other even tertiary? So the relationship often develop between the teacher and student that are too informal, which can lead to management problems. Sometimes too, if the teacher is not disciplined, in that the learners may have that kind of respect for the teacher, it may create a problem. You may not be able to control the class. And these limitations can be overcome with proper planning. So it all depends on how you are going to plan and the rules and regulations governing the simulation and the games. Some of the better simulation and games are those designed by teachers who develop and adjust the activities according to their own students. Even better students can develop their own simulation and games. Yes, some of you who can also come up with your own simulation and games that are very, very educated, but usually they should be related to the courses you are studying. The teacher's role when using heuristic methods, and the heuristic methods, we are talking about the discovery, they are talking about the simulation, we are talking about games, we are talking about what inquiry. All these form part of what we call the heuristic methods. So you should function as a facilitator. The idea of all these, the learner-centered approaches, the student-centered approaches, you the teacher, you are just a facilitator. You are there to guide, you are there to help. You are not there to issue instructions, to be chasing learners with cane. They are not animals. You are there to observe, but you prompt them as and when the need arises. So accomplishment of your goals usually calls for continuous monitoring of your students. So your work is to monitor. You ask probing questions. You ask leading questions. So if you do this, what will happen? So if you do that, what happened? You need to guide them to be able to come out with their solution to problem. You don't instruct, you don't lecture. Problem solving often requires special attention. So you must help students constantly in their systematic investigation of problems. So every step you need to be there to provide assistance. And you must make sure problem solving methodologies focus on and are appropriately applied to the various aspects of the problem. So you need, in every step, you need to be there to guide them, to coach them, ask probing questions, what to do and what not to do. Your role is to help, to assist learners. Indeed, the problem must be established, related issues must also be clarified. Ways of obtaining information must also be proposed, so that is your duty. And conclusions and discovery must be formed. And it is your duty to also guide learners on how to draw conclusions. You don't have to draw conclusions for them, or you can guide them. In fact, you would be wise to demand that students submit periodic progress report related to their investigative progress. So if they are using the steps in either the discovery or whatever, or the inquiry, identification of the problem, when they identify the problem, there are certain things they need to do. Then you have, as a facilitator, you need to guide them, read through the problem, whether it is researchable, whether it is manageable. Then you guide them and let them even write a progress report. So how are you going to investigate? Where are you going to get the information? If you get the information, what are you going to do? You get the information from the internet, from the library, from the laboratory. What are you going to do? And if there are patterns and relationships, how do you report them? All these must be done by the student, but you need to guide them. So in using simulation and game, you must be familiar with the desired rules and conflict to be followed. So you yourself must be aware of all these. And in the case of games, you should be wise to play the game yourself first. Try all these and see whether it is workable before you allow students to embark on it. If you do not play the game yourself, how then do you ensure that students will be able to do it? If you don't simulate the issue, follow the rules and regulations, and know the consequences of it, how then do you allow learners to go through? So all this, you need to try it yourself first and be sure before you can allow learners to embark on it. In addition, it is a good idea to prepare handout materials and guidelines for students. As you try these things out, the challenges and what have you that they will encounter, you need to write it down as a checklist to be given to the learners. Then we also have what we call the heuristic methods. Require a close working relationship between you and your students. And as I was saying, Madam took you through the facilitative relationship and the principles of teaching. You need to love your learners. You need to work closely with them. You need to respect them. So if you respect your learners, they also respect you. And you must constantly be alert for what we call hang-ups and then stumbling blocks. Some of the students, that will also create problems for you in the teaching and learning process. So your ability to overcome those challenges makes you a good facilitator. So students must also not be simply be turned loose and allowed to flounder around or follow their own whims. What we are saying is that if you give them too much freedom, then they tend to misbehave. So usually, as a teacher, you must be disciplined in order to be able to control and then direct the student. So we end our lecture here, and what I will encourage all of you to do is that COVID is real, and you need to keep to the safety protocols of the COVID. Make sure you carry your nose mask around, wear them, practice hand washing, and also ensure that you practice what we call the social distancing. And what I will encourage you to do is that view the video, like it, share it with your colleagues, and if there are any issues that you need me to address them, you can also write them down so that I'll find the appropriate time and address them. I wish you well in all your endeavors. May God bless and keep you till we meet face to face. Have a nice day. Bye bye.